Good evening. That was a problem. Good evening. There we go. Good evening. I will now call the September 14th, 2021 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format, given the need to ensure health and safety alongside public access. Meeting in person are several members of our board, key members of the cabinet, and those presenting on agenda items. To ensure public access, the meeting is also being live streamed on the district YouTube channel, and public comment is available live through Zoom. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate right, board directors Marcus Lagarde, Carrie McPherson Douglas, Shamiko Montgomery, and Shirley Olson. Amy Tatum and Yanette Sari Yarandi Gonzalez are absent tonight. To my immediate left are Superintendent Dr. Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Laura Nordquist, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. And I am Melissa Barnes-Delakia, Chair of the Board. We will now move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 3, review of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda. However, there have been 2 last-minute late additions to the agenda. We added some documentation earlier today on language modifications for item 8H, and we also added a slide presentation for 8B, which includes some documentation on our enrollment status. So you will find those in our agenda as you currently see it here today.
Thank you. Are there any requested changes from board members? Seeing no changes requested, we will move forward. For item 4, for the monthly business meetings of Board of Directors, the board has established a new item at the beginning of each meeting for board recognitions. This is a time to acknowledge the work of members of the Ben Lapine Schools team, as well as community partners. I would like to invite Katie Legacy to step forward. Katie. Tonight, I have the privilege of acknowledging the work of Executive Director of High Schools, Katie Legacy. As many know, the pandemic caused us to pause our superintendent search for a year. While we have not acknowledged our appreciation of Dr. Nordquist for stepping into the role of superintendent, what our community also needs to know is the similarly deep appreciation we hold for Katie, who stepped into the role of deputy superintendent. In doing so, we had one of the only districts in the state that was led by 2 women, a notable feat in and of itself. But what is even more notable is the deep expertise Katie brought to that role. She has been a true thought leader in our district, championing equitable services for students with special needs and ensuring students are supported and remaining in class and maximizing their time there. When difficult decisions needed to be made last year, Katie did not shrink away, but worked with school site leaders to inform and then enact them. And let me tell you, they weren't always popular, but nothing in this pandemic has been, and Katie leaned into that work and the work that had to be done. Katie was the first cabinet member I connected with as a new board member. She was an exceptional deputy superintendent. She is an exceptional executive director in what is our most complex system, our high schools. I look forward to all she will continue to bring to our students, families, and staff, and I want to express the board's gratitude for all she has already given over the years, not just this last one. Thank you, Executive Director Katie Legacy. We will now move into public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members, as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of many avenues available to ensure that connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email, as well as in writing. Individual board members also make themselves available for phone, video, and/or in-person conversations. This said, I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Directors that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. As such, the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person to follow up with you. We will now open for public comment and hear from stakeholders on topics in order that they appear on the agenda, in the order that they appear on the agenda. Our policy is to hear a maximum of 10 minutes of comments per agenda item to honor the time of all participants and to ensure the core work of the board is completed during this meeting. We will also hear 10 minutes of comments on non-agendized items in total. Individual speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to allow more voices to be heard. I will ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off topic for the agenda item for which they have signed up, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. We'll now move forward, and I would like to call forward on item 7A, Mike Riley.
This is Mike. Can everybody hear me? So thumbs up. Chair Barnes-Delakia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, Chair Barnes-Delakia, school board members, and Superintendent Cook. My name is Mike Riley. I'm a resident of the Ben Lapine School District, and both of my sons attended Ben Lapine schools through high school. I'm here tonight to thank you for your support of Welcoming Week. A big part of our American story and our strength as a nation is about the value and contributions of immigrants. I applaud and fully support the district's commitment to creating a safe, inclusive, and welcoming place for every child who walks through the doors of our local schools and every adult who works there, regardless of their race, national origin, language, or gender identity or sexual preference or ability. As an immigrant myself, I know how important it is to feel like you belong in your new home. And I want to ensure that immigrants and all members of our community feel welcome and included in our schools. I believe we're stronger when we embrace and include the full diversity of our community. We're also stronger when we ensure that our students are taught honest and factual education about the history of racism and other forms of oppression in our state and nation and their persistence today. I encourage the district to do everything it can to ensure that all of our students learn this history. We can only change our future for the better if we fully understand how we got to the present. Please stay the course on your commitment to inclusion and equity and teaching the full and honest story about racism and oppression. You have my full support. And again, thank you so much for your proclamation on Welcoming Week and for including that in one of your priorities and for the community. Finally, thanks so much for your service and your dedication to our youth and the future of our community. Myself and many others in the community appreciate all the time that all of you put in and your dedication to our future. Thanks, that's what I have.
Thank you, Mike. Next, for item 7B, we have Lynn Harmon.
Haroon, that's it.
Haroon, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Members of the board, good evening. For the record, my name is Lynn Haroon, and I am a resident of Sun River. I do not have children attending the school district. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of the Central Oregon chapter of the Climate Reality Project. I am asking that the Sites and Facilities Committee address the need for climate resiliency of existing and new schools. It is imperative that the district commit to more renewable energy and incorporation of best available green technologies. As a member of the community, I have to say that I'm shocked that the district has built 4 new schools, none of which has solar installed on them. Importantly, schools are tasked with preparing young people for the future. By bringing solar and other green technologies to schools, students will benefit from the application of the science and solar and engineering skills needed for the future. Solar manufacturing and installation costs have come down significantly. From Medford to Astoria to Pendleton, districts around the state are putting solar on their schools. Coming from one of the sunniest parts of the state, there is absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be leading the charge instead of lagging behind. As the school district begins the process of a new bond, it is imperative to include renewables. Oregon's renewable portfolio standard requires that 50% of electricity come from renewable resources by 2040, and the newly passed bill, HB 2021, requires an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from electricity by 2030. Finally, Oregon requires that public entities spend 1.5% of public building construction costs for green energy technologies. These are the goals of the state that our state has established. The school district needs to be working towards these goals and not against them. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Next, we have item 8G, Lorelei Garrity. Excuse me, Lorelei.
We're looking for Lorelei. I do not see a Lorelei. Could you ask Zoom to see if there's anybody as Lorelei in there? Melissa?
Oh,
Could
me?
you just ask to see if there's
Yes, Lorelei, we are looking for you in Zoom and are hoping that you can indicate to us that you are there.
I'm not seeing Lorelei.
All right, we have a second one on the same item, 8G, so I'm going to suggest that we move forward. And then if we can find Lorelei, then we will add her at the end as well. But our second speaker on 8G is Heather McNeil.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board for giving us time for public comment. My name is Heather McNeil and I live in Bend. My daughter attended Highland Elementary, Cascade Middle School, and graduated from Summit High Schools a few years ago. I have read through the policies and regulations in review and want to express my support for their focus on diversity, equity, research, and being exposed to differing points of view. I believe strongly in the value of allowing students to learn history from many perspectives in order to fully understand its relevance today. I applaud the board, superintendent, and teachers for recognizing the importance of making sure that all students feel empowered, valued, and respected. I also want to express my support for you during recent difficult board meetings and to thank you for adhering to state law, which address the measures necessary for the safety and health of students and staff. I thank you for your dedication. That's all.
Thank you. Have we found Lorelei?
I still do not see her.
Okay. Then we will move into our non-agendized items. Our first is Barbara Craig.
And I am not seeing Barbara at this point in time either.
Okay. Barbara Craig, if you are in the meeting and have a way of letting us know, that would be appreciated. We'll hold your spot and we're going to continue to move forward. Next, we are looking for Gwen Gamble.
Yes, hello. My name is Gwen Gamble, and I'm a resident of Sun River and a retired teacher. I'm a strong supporter of public education, and I want to take this time to thank each of the school board members for their voluntary service to our community. You have had to make some particularly difficult decisions during this pandemic, and I applaud each and every one of you for making decisions that protect the health and well-being of students and staff. I want to thank you for supporting the laws put in place by our governor at the recommendation of the Oregon Health Authority. Keeping students able to attend school in person has proven to be a priority to you. However, there are consequences, and you have offered leadership and guidance for our schools to offer a safe educational experience. I applaud you for making it clear that parents have choices and that there is an online school opportunity for children. Please continue knowing you have the support of the majority of your constituents. And once again, I really thank you for the dedication to our community and the service you provide. That's it.
Thank you, Gwen.
Mm-hmm.
Next is Colleen Calishu. Calishu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman and the board for receiving this public comment. I speak to you today from the point of view of a Bend resident, the parent of children who attend Bend schools and are too young to be vaccinated, a member of a medically vulnerable family, but also a clinician and a clinical scientist deeply familiar with the available evidence on COVID risk mitigation. I've paid close attention to what the board has approved and what the district has done in terms of risk mitigation right now in our schools. And I'm very concerned that we are not doing enough. We all wanted to be in a different place than we are this fall. Delta is far more contagious and our local cases are far higher than ever before, yet our current risk mitigation measures are looser than last year. They need to be tighter. We need surveillance testing for teachers, students, and staff using rapid antigen tests. There is evidence this reduces spread and also keeps kids in school longer and more, something we all want. There is funding from the government for this, but we aren't doing it. We need teachers and staffs in masks that are more protective than cloth masks. This needs to be a requirement, not an option. Many experts have called for a tighter definition of a close contact than the district is currently using. These calls are because of how Delta is more contagious. The time and distance thresholds need to be decreased. Doing the bare minimum required by the state is not enough. This is an equity and justice issue, as marginalized populations are impacted more by this pandemic, including medically vulnerable families and our BIPOC community members. I urge you to tighten our protections in our schools for the benefit of our children and our entire community, especially those who are most vulnerable, both medically and socially.
Thank you very much. Next is Jamie Hempstead.
Hello, I'm here. My name is Jamie Hempstead, and my wife and I are parents of two boys that go to High Desert Middle School. Yesterday, we received an email from Kim Crabtree, the Director of Transportation. She informed us that after over 2 years of receiving bus service, our children would no longer be able to ride the bus. Ms. Crabtree informed us that we were 1.4 miles from the school boundary, and this was under the 1.5 miles required by state statute. However, the school boundary is more than a half a mile to the front door of High Desert Middle School. The school boundary is a sidewalk where 27th Avenue and Ferguson Street meet. According to Google Maps, it is 1.9 miles or 45 minutes walking each way from our home to High Desert. ORS statute 327.043 states, a school district is required to provide transportation for secondary school students who reside more than 1.5 miles from school. It does not say school boundary, as was quoted by the director. Our children, possibly others, are going to be required to walk nearly 2 miles each way to the door of their middle school. I do not believe the Director of Transportation and the Bend Lapine School District are meeting their legal requirement under the state statute. I repeat, the boundary is 1.4 miles from home. It is not where my children go to their classes. The school is 1.9 miles away from where the classes are. Hopefully, I've shown you legally how this obligation is not being fulfilled. However, I would like to leave you with a short narrative to explain what a day will be like for my 11-year-old. He will walk 1.9 miles, 45 minutes each way to school with a backpack, sports clothes, and his violin. Most days of the year will be dark, cold, and the ground will most probably be covered in ice or snow. I look forward to hearing from the district representative with a resolution to this situation. We have emailed quite a few people, and they continue to just say that we need to take the word from Ms. Crabtree, the director, and that's the final word on this issue. Board, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jamie. I am going to move forward with our last comment from Sean Rule, and then we do have Lorelei afterwards. She is now in attendance. So we'll hear from Sean Rule first.
Everyone, thank you so much for letting me talk, and I won't be long. I work with Marcus up at COCC. I teach quantitative literacy classes up there, and I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate the work you do. I know you catch a lot of flack, and I just wanted to let you know I trust your guidance. I know it's not easy. These are crazy times, and I know that you're looking at all the data, just like I teach my students how to do. You know, look where it comes from, look at all the options. So just basically, thank you all for the work that you do, and I trust the decisions you make moving forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Sean. We are now going to step back to 8G and Lorelei Garrity.
Thank you so much. I apologize for not being able to access the Zoom, but I appreciate being fitted in here. My name is Lorelei. I live in Prineville, but I volunteer and work in Bend. Thank you to the school board for the chance to speak with you tonight and for your unwavering support of our students and their social, emotional well-being and their physical health during the pandemic. It's exciting to see policies and regulations regarding the study of controversial topics included under 8G of the agenda. I'd like to specifically appreciate the inclusion of, quote, understanding propaganda devices in the INB AP draft. Propaganda discourages critical thinking, pushes out misinformation, and makes us question what's real and what's not. If we want to empower students to find solutions to the problems that we're passing down to them, they need to be equipped with the knowledge and skills to see misinformation for what it is, a barrier to their happiness and success. I urge the school board to continue searching for and implementing ways to support students in their search for truth, including conflict resolution that builds community rather than divides us. Sometimes controversial topics lead to disagreements. It's important that we not only teach students how to study controversy, but also how to resolve conflict born from those disagreements. I appreciate your time this evening, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Lorelei. And then I just wanted to double check, did we see Barbara Craig? No. All right. With that, that is the end of our public comments, the end of the people that signed up for public comment. We also have received written public comment from individuals who either did not wish to speak or for which there was not enough available time. And so we do have all of those public comments, and those will be part of our permanent record. We will now move into our consent agenda. Items that are routine in nature are placed on the consent agenda and for information purposes only. Tonight, these include 6A, approval of minutes, 6B, approval of personnel recommendations, and 6C, approval of bargaining agreement. Any item placed on the consent agenda may be removed at the request of any board member prior to the time a vote is taken. All remaining items of the consent for action are then disposed of in a single motion. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent for action as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second.
So the motion has been made by Carrie and then seconded by Shamiko. Is there any discussion? Oh, there isn't any discussion. It's consent for agenda. Then we will move into a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any, sorry, any against? And any abstentions? Motion passes. We will now move into action items for tonight's board business meeting. The first action of the evening is acknowledging the work of Welcoming Week in our community and across our state and nation. Is there a board member who wishes to read the proclamation? Otherwise, I will do so myself. I will do so myself. Welcoming Week 2021 proclamation. Whereas our community, state, and nation are stronger when we work together as a people in seeking the American dream through the shared values of hard work and equitable opportunity, and whereas the diverse experiences and perspectives of our students and families are a vital part of our community, enriching and strengthening our schools, community, and collective future, and whereas the success of Ben Lapine schools depends on making sure that all students and families feel welcome and experience a sense of belonging, including those who are underserved and are marginalized, who are recent immigrants, who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who are experiencing poverty, houselessness, or foster and kinship care, who are LGBTQ+, who are experiencing disability, and who are linguistically diverse. Now, therefore, it is resolved that we, the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools, hereby proclaim September 10th through the 19th, 2021, Welcoming Week. We invite all students and families of Ben Lapine Schools to join this movement of schools and communities nationwide, renewing our commitment to our core American values and taking action together to build strong and inclusive schools across our community that stand as a beacon of education and opportunity. Next, we will take action on our sites and facilities charge. Approximately every 5 years, the district convenes a committee of community members and staff to refresh our sites and facilities plan. The sites and facilities plan is a 20-year facilities plan designed to identify and prioritize needs in our facilities across the district, as well as identify when additional capacity is needed based on a 20-year enrollment projection. The last time the plan was updated was in 2016. The 2016 plan can be found on the BLS website. The board's executive limitation, number 7, facilities, requires the committee to carry out the board-developed charge in their committee work. Following this, attached is a summary and then a redlined version of the changes from the 2016 work. The only suggested change would be to remove the specific request regarding the Education Center, as that work was completed in 2016. So that the Education Center would not need to be reviewed again as part of the sites and facilities charge, as it had already been done. Also included is a clean version after removing the Education Center language. So the board members have both the red line and the clean, as well as a proposed motion. Do I hear a motion to charge, to approve the board's charge for the Sites and Facilities Committee as presented?
Make a motion to approve the as seen for the facilities.
Thank you, Marcus. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Shirley. So the motion was made by Marcus and seconded by Shirley. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I think there may be reason to include the Education Center again, just given that City Council is in discussions about moving their location downtown, and I think it opens up a conversation for the community to think about this entire area. I have no idea if it would lead anywhere, but I think it makes sense not to exclude it when we have another major tenant connected to this parking lot reviewing their use of the space, and it could open up the opportunity for the community to re-envision this area as a public gathering space. It could also allow us to re-envision having a board meeting venue that would work for city council and school board and other entities who need meeting space that would accommodate the size of the public that our city now has as a much bigger place than when this boardroom was created. So personally, I would like to see the Education Center reviewed again for that reason.
I have another question. I'm not sure if the existing land holdings that we have actually are reflected in the summary. Nothing urgent, just curious. I do know that we've had some land and we've used it significantly well in terms of the new schools we've built and so on, but I do think we own some more land, and I'd like to know where that is at some point in time. Maybe we could simply have just a quick email on that.
Is there other discussion?
No, I just support Carrie's suggestion to add the Education Center back in the Sites and Facilities Review.
Can I suggest a modified motion, or?
Yeah, a modified motion might be appropriate at this point if you'd like to try.
I would motion to approve the board sites and facilities charge as presented, with the addition of adding the Education Center back into our next review.
Again, second? Again, second?
All right, so I have Carrie making a modified motion, and then Shirley seconding that modified motion. Is there discussion on the modified motion? My discussion would be that I do not feel that a modification is necessary at this time. I believe that the team has fully reviewed recently the use of the Education Center, so I do not support a modification of the motion. Is there any further discussion? Let's take a vote first on the modified motion, which would approve the sites and facilities charge with the addition back in of the Education Center. All in favor?
Yay.
Aye.
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 All against? Aye. And there are no abstentions, so motion passes 4-1. I made a mistake, and I did not call for a vote on the proclamation. I apologize for welcoming week. And so after making my proclamation, is there a motion to approve the proclamation made by the board?
I'll motion to approve the Welcoming Week proclamation.
Thank you, Carrie. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
The motion is made by Carrie, seconded by Marcus. Is there any further discussion? Then we will move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against?
Aye. Sorry.
It's okay. Any against? And any abstentions? Motion passes. We will now move into reports. And this is very exciting because we're actually going to get into teaching and learning, which is what this district is all about. First up, we have as item 8A, the Education Foundation for Ben Lapine Schools. And they are joining us tonight to share about their work prior to our nomination of a board member to join their board as ex officio, in an ex officio capacity. I will hand this over to the new Executive Director, Stacy Simpson.
Hi there. Thanks so much for giving us time to share what we've been doing and to elect a new board member. We're excited about that. So I've been on board about 6 weeks now, and it's been a busy 6 weeks. We've been busy issuing scholarships to the students in the spring, the seniors who had been awarded scholarships, sending them off to their colleges of choice. And we've been receiving classroom grant applications from teachers, and we are on our second fundraiser so far in a short amount of time. So it's been busy. For those of you who don't know about the Education Foundation, we were founded in 1988, and our mission is to prepare our students for success and the future through educational and extracurricular opportunities. And since 2003, the Education Foundation has invested over $1.6 million into local public schools through endowments, special projects, and our main programs. One of our main programs is classroom grants, and these are awarded annually. Last spring, we did a spring session of classroom grants because kids weren't in the classrooms. We waited until they were back in there and did some mini grants in the spring. We are back to a fall awarding session for classroom grants, and the grant session is open. It started in the spring, so we've started to get some then, and they've been trickling in. The deadline was September 30th. But our board of directors voted on Friday to extend it until October 15th because we know how busy it is at the beginning of the year. I'm a former educator myself. I taught mostly middle school for 7 years, so I know how busy it is. So we wanted you to have a little extra time, all of you teachers out there, to get those grants in, those applications in. And generally, the grants are awarded for art, music, STEM, and wellness programs, but we're open to whatever ideas teachers have out there. Priority is given to the high need schools whose population is served under the free and reduced lunch program. And again, the new deadline is October 15th on that. The other program that we have supported in the past has been activity fee scholarships, where we provide financial aid for participation fees associated with after-school athletic events and sports. And generally, it's been about $36,000 a year that we have given to help those students to be able to participate in those activities. In more recent years, there are a couple of scholarship programs that have come about. In 2015, the Perseverance Award scholarships began, and these recognize seniors who demonstrate perseverance by overcoming difficult life challenges to graduate and have future educational goals. And then we have the Latino scholarships that started in 2018, and this is in collaboration with the Oregon Community Foundation, donors, and partnership with the Central Oregon Latino Partnership Program. And so those have been some scholarships we've been sending out, and we hope to be able to continue those scholarship programs as well and support the district in whatever ways we can. Our funding comes from fundraisers, grants, community donors, endowments, and we have some employees who give through payroll deduction or through United Way payroll deductions that have specified the Education Foundation as the beneficiary. So we appreciate all of the community support from everyone so that we can continue to do the good work and help you. Traditionally, our fundraiser, our signature fundraiser, has been the Trivia Bee. And the past 2 springs, we've not been able to have that because of COVID. But we are looking at other fundraisers that we can do, and we're hoping to maybe revamp a Trivia Bee again. We don't have a timeline for that yet. We do currently have a fundraiser going, and it is a wine raffle. And if anyone would like to purchase tickets, feel free to contact the Education Foundation. Tickets are $10 each, or you can get a book of 5 tickets for $45. And the first prize is 24 bottles of ultra premium wine. The second prize is 12 bottles, and the third prize is 6 bottles. So feel free to reach out if anyone would like to purchase raffle tickets or donate to the foundation or volunteer or be a part of things. We have a board of 12, and we're recruiting some other board members as well. So if anyone wants to get involved in our good works and help support Ben Lapine Schools, please contact us. And thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. I believe as part of the ask, it was requested that one of our board members join as an ex officio member of the Education Foundation for Ben Lapine Schools. And my understanding is that Shamiko Montgomery would be willing to step into that role. And so is there a nomination to have Shamiko serve in that role for the Education Foundation?
I'm going to nominate Shamiko Montgomery to be the nominee for the Educational Foundation.
Thank you, Marcus. And is there a second?
Second.
Great. So Marcus has made the motion and Carrie has seconded. Is there any other discussion?
I just had a quick question sorry about that. She mentioned about OCF. I wouldn't wonder if the foundation had tapped into the funds from OCF from this summer. They had a large grant that came through to be able to help with the Black Student Success Network, to be able to help out with the various programming that was going to be that's going on when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. Also, has the foundation reached out to any of the other BIPOC organizations who can teach supplemental courses to be able to help the in-classroom to be supported and basically continue to work on our initiative that we have for our district?
Anyone is welcome to write a grant. It could be, it can come from a school, it can come from a principal, it doesn't just have to be the teachers. So if there were particular sites, or if it was a district-wide program that you wanted to implement, there have been district-wide programs that we have supported before. So we are happy to collaborate with you or OCF or any entities that want to help out and make life better for our students.
I'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds great.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
No, thank you to Stacy and team, and thank you to Shamiko for being willing to step into the ex officio role.
All right, hearing no other discussion or questions, all in favor of Shamiko serving as our ex officio board member for Education Foundation? Aye?
Aye.
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 Any against? And no abstentions. Great, motion passes. Stacy, thank you so much for the work of Education Foundation. I think that the equalizing of funding across our district and really focused work is exceptional. And I'm really excited also about the endowed work that is starting to be done. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for this work. And thank you, Shamiko, for stepping into that role. We're going to now move into reports. And as I said earlier, the core work of our district is teaching and learning. So I'm so excited for the next 2 reports that are focused on that work tonight. First is Deputy Superintendent Dr. Laura Nordquist to share about our adult summer learning.
In planning board agendas a few weeks ago, Melissa and Marcus talked about having an update about summer learning for our students. And as we began planning for that, we thought it would also be worthwhile to share with the board and the public some of the work that hundreds and hundreds of our staff members also did during the summer in terms of their own learning. And so to share with you some information about that, 3 of the people who have led the work are here to present. We have Kinsey Martin, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Dean Richards, who is the Director of Secondary Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning, and Julie Walker, who's the Director of Elementary Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning. So I'll turn it over to them.
Info for you. We had a lot of wonderful opportunities for staff in lots of different areas. It was hard to choose just a few to highlight for you all. But this is one that we selected because I think it sort of highlights how we try to start the year as far as our theme for our launch with leadership and with our staff as well. The theme was around reconnect, renew, reimagine, and recommit. And one of the activities that our multilingual staff did, including dual language teachers and administrators, language specialists, and our liaison team, was a retreat to do just that, to sort of reconnect and reimagine our services as part of some of our other conversations around our work with the multilingual community, and recommit to some really awesome new plans as a team. So we started with some team building and had a great partner agency, Vámonos Outside, who led us through some of that work. So we just wanted to appreciate them for their time with us as a team. And then we also dug into the history of how our U.S. educational system has approached culturally and linguistically diverse learners over many, many years in our country. And did that work so that we as educators, many of us who grew up in this system of U.S. education ourselves and didn't learn these things necessarily in education, that we would have a better understanding of the context for our work and the history of our own country in order to then provide the best services and educate our students in the most meaningful way possible. We use that information to reflect on ourselves, our own identities and experiences, and who we are in relationship to the community that we serve, and then used that to do some strategic planning and instructional design, some really neat family engagement and student units that our team is coming up with for the year. So that's just one of many different opportunities that our team dug into this summer, and I think Julie Walker is going to share next about another one, so thank you so much.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Can you change the slide, please? Thank you. I'm just going to highlight one of the opportunities that our K-5 teachers had this summer. So one of the things is early literacy has been really critical in our work in the last few years. And as of 5 years ago, the legislature passed SB 1003 and SB 612, which are known as the dyslexia legislation, essentially. And as part of that legislation, school districts were required to have one person that was trained in every K-5 school around knowledge of not only early literacy, but dyslexia and different approaches to serving students with dyslexia. And so we decided to invest in Orton Gillingham training, and we made that decision based on the Orton Gillingham approach being explicit and very systematic in terms of phonics instruction. And so we started with one person from every building being trained, and over the last few years, that has grown to be 80 plus educators that are trained across our 19 elementary schools and a couple of our middle schools as well. And one of the really exciting things for this year was this was the first year that we have moved out of having essentially our specialists being trained, and half of the people trained this summer were classroom teachers. And that is our hope for the future, is to continue this training, continue getting our classroom teachers the training that they need, because it's our belief that that training is essential in making sure that our students learn to read. So thank you.
Good evening. So I was kind of torn about what to talk about. We did do a really great training for over 80 of our secondary teachers on reading and writing skills. That's in the board packet, so take a look at that. But we landed on talking about the Innovative Teaching and Learning Conference. It's 2 days, and it was entirely put on and presented by Ben Lapine teachers and staff. It was a really invigorating time to have everybody back together. We had over 200 people registered for each of the 2 days of learning. And we had high-level, national-level keynoters coming and giving the presentations. And so there was a keynote each day, followed by 3 sessions. And that content was it was language arts, science, math, social emotional learning, mental health, work on standards, technology, music, our grading policy and work. So really wide-ranging choice for teachers to attend, K-12 teachers attending. And so it was a really nice way for us to kick off the year. This is the third year in a row that we've done this. Looking forward to doing it again next year. Thank you to the board members who were able to attend. Appreciate you being able to come and support our teachers there. Just a really exciting couple of days, and we love to put this on for our staff. So looking forward to doing this again next year and continuing that wide breadth coming through. So appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Kinsey and Julie and Dean. I know in your board packet, I included a number of other kind of key initiatives that involved our staff during the summer, but I'd just like to open it up to board members. If you have questions for any of our team members or me, we're happy to respond.
The key piece I would love to hear a report on is the Take It Up training, and I know eventually CFE, because I know that's one of our continual initiatives for us this year. Because I was at the Take It Up training, it was great to be able to see that many instructors there. My thing with that is what other continued support are we going to continue throughout the year? Because it's not just I don't want us to check a box on that. I want to make sure that we continue to have those opportunities for teachers to be able to utilize those skill sets to be able to help within their classrooms.
That's a great question, Marcus, and I'll let Kinsey leads that work in the district, so I'll have her respond.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, because I think all of us who have been through it would agree that you're left with this sort of, now what? And that's definitely not a feeling that we want to leave our staff hanging or do an initial step and not follow through. We have been working with our leadership team on some inside-out work to keep it going as part of our internal professional development structure, not just a training you can opt into, but part of our required training for administrators, and we will continue embedding that in for our leadership. I think part of the thinking there is knowing that inside-out work you never arrive. You're never, totally done with that journey. And so we will continue plugging that in throughout all of our professional development. We also are really working on taking our equity lens questions that we have and embedding them in different opportunities to practice applying those to decision making. We have them as part of our cabinet norms when we're making decisions as a team, and having our building principals using those with their leadership teams in practicing now that I am on this journey and understanding the history of education in the United States and Oregon in particular. How do I put that lens on my decision making? We have some employee resource group structures that we're forming to support staff so that as we learn more about our climate and where we can get better at supporting our own team, putting some support structures in place for staff, and also some networking and opportunities for staff to have leadership and voice in improving our system from the inside out. And our students as well, making sure that we're embedding student voice into the innovative conference that Dean mentioned, and bringing more of those panels and opportunities to our teachers and to our principals, so that we can hear from students and then act on what they recommend and tell us about their experiences. Another piece that I think is a natural next step from taking it up in CFE, as we learn about student experiences and our community experiences with our system. We want to ultimately prevent incidents from occurring, but also when they do occur, that we understand the significance of different incidents that we might not personally have experience with, and how we respond in a restorative way, trying to make sure that we're aware and respectful and swift in our response, but also very restorative and educational. And then really trying to incorporate community partnership in each of those too. So those are a few of our ways that we're looking for those next steps, and then also just getting more people through that training. We fill them up every time we offer it, which is wonderful, but continuing to maximize access to it.
Thank you, because I think ultimately what I'm trying to say is that I don't want it to be where they got the training, but then they never got support after.
Right.
And I think ultimately what we're looking at too is the community at large, as the community diversifies, not only in thought, but in population as well, and also in culture. We want to make sure that we have those opportunities for teachers to be able to have the skill sets and the tools to be able to do the things in the classroom.
Yes.
Because we know there's a lot of community organizations who are willing to help and support what you're trying to do. And I know they meet periodically with the superintendent, so forth and so on. I just want to make sure that we don't, lose an opportunity to continue to keep moving the needle.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I could ask more questions, but it's a media agenda, but I just appreciate the opportunity to hear about adult learning. It's obviously probably the strongest lever for improving student learning experiences. Over time, I would love to just hear more about how you determine, I know we have very limited dedicated adult learning time, how you determine how to spend that time, and then maybe more importantly, how you measure the efficacy of how that time is spent over time, and perhaps how our adult learning has changed over the years, or what we've learned, but you don't have to answer that all tonight.
Carrie, a couple things I would want to share tonight. When you talk about time, that is a huge challenge for us, and I know you as representatives of the public probably hear pushback from parents around School Improvement Wednesday time, and that it is gold for us in terms of the growth of our staff and their opportunities to work in collaboration with one another. And without that, honestly, I just don't know how we make significant progress as an organization. So I think it's for you to keep in mind, and always welcome to join a building during an SIW and kind of see what happens during that time. But it's very important to us. A challenge that we're facing, many of our significant professional learning activities during the year have a sub-out teachers from the classroom, but we have such a huge shortage of substitutes this year that's a challenge, and we're trying to think of creative ways. Can we pay people to come on Saturdays? Can we do 2-hour sessions Wednesdays and pay people additionally for some of this extra work? So that is definitely a challenge for us this year.
I would just like to add that we would welcome any board members participating. Anytime you want to participate in any of the professional learning we push our adults to be a part of, that we would welcome and invite you to share in that opportunity if anybody's interested.
Thank you. And thank you, Kenzie, Julie, and Dean. Really appreciate being able to hear about the work that is. It is the work that pushes the needle for our district. And so I'm very excited, both in terms of the equity lens and work that is being done. The early literacy, which is very timely because we are in an ELA adoption, and I happen to be pretty familiar with Orton Gillingham. And then just the ILTC conference and being able, I think the one group we didn't mention was students. And of the different sessions that I was able to see, I think one of the most powerful was the student panel. And so just thank you for the opportunity for us as board members to come and peer over the shoulders and see the incredible adult learning that's happening in our district. With that, we are going to move into summer learning for students. And we are going to hear from our Executive Director for Middle School Programs, Juan Cuadros, on that work.
I think we also have one of our Ben Lapine Online administrators, Kevin Milner, to help support with this presentation tonight.
Yeah, and also Wendy, are you there? Wendy McCulloch, she is currently the principal at High Desert Middle School, and she was also the other administrator for the secondary part of high school, of the summer programming. Wendy?
Hi, friends. I'm here.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for your service. I want to thank you and for all that you do for our school district, students, and families. I'm Juan Cuadros. I'm the Executive Director of Middle Schools, but I want to give full disclosure that this program would not have been possible without the collaboration of a lot of people, like food service, transportation, HR, payroll, Ben Park and Rec, Children's Forest, and I'm probably missing some. I can't even think of all of them, but there was a ton of people. But I want to give a huge thanks, a huge thanks to Wendy McCulloch and Kevin Milner. They were totally instrumental in propping up this program. Without them, I don't think this would have happened. So thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Wendy, for all of your work over the summer. So let me share a broad overview of summer school. It was held during the month of August. Kids were in classes from August 2nd to August 19th, 4 days a week. There were 5 elementary sites: Elk Meadow, Buckingham, Lava Ridge, Silver Rail, and Roslyn in Lapine. There were 4 middle schools: High Desert, Lapine Middle School, and Skyview. The high school sites were Bend Senior High School, Lapine High School, Mountain View, and Realms. We had over 1,500 kids enrolled. In brick and mortar schools, there were 1,050 students, and BLSO, there were 515. So there were a lot of kids who participated in summer school. Specifically, there were 492 elementary students, 357 middle schoolers, and 201 high schoolers. But I don't want to continue to bore you with all these statistics and with all of this. You're probably going to glaze over if I continue with that. Let me share the following video that is a testimonial to the success of summer school. I interviewed some elementary students, a middle schooler, a lead teacher, and a parent. And the video that you're going to view is courtesy of TLC Films, by yours truly, produced by yours truly. So the hope is here that we're going to roll this video. It's about 4.5 minutes long. And then my hope is that you have some questions and that I probably won't be able to answer, and I'll be able to defer those to either Kevin or Wendy. So can we please roll the video?
I like meeting a lot of people that are going to my new middle school. The thing I love, I'm Scarlett, and the thing I love about summer school is that it's fun, talented, and I get to make new friends, and also I'm in first grade.
Hi, I'm Giovanni, and I'm in fifth grade, and the thing that I like about summer school is art.
And my name's Bailey, and what I like about summer school is that I can meet some of my friends, and I get to do art. and I'm in 2nd grade.
Nice, nice. What was your favorite part of summer school?
I like all the activities that we did at the end of the week. I like, we did this carnival thing and I liked it.
Oh, tell me a little bit more about the carnival.
We did like volleyball and a ton of games, like water balloon games and tug of war, and yeah, it was really fun.
Oh, cool, cool. Tell me a couple of things that you learned at summer school. What are some of the things that you learned in terms of your academics?
We did some math, and I learned a couple new things. And I think that's mostly it.
Awesome, that is really great, you guys. So tell me one thing that you learned in summer school.
That we are smart and we're getting ready to read.
That mistakes show that you're learning.
Hi, I'm Maria Schwab. I was a lead teacher and supervisor at Silver Rail Summer School. It was an amazing experience. I got to work with teachers across the district. I got to know students from across the district. I worked closely with nutrition services and also got to connect with our custodial staff and transportation to provide a summer school program that went smoothly for the students. Best parts that I saw were students engaged and learning. Every time I walked into a classroom, I saw teachers and students that were actively using the curriculum, enjoying the curriculum, and getting a head start on school.
Well, I'm here with Shannon Guerrero, and this is Sierra's mom. And just kind of from your parent perspective, can you tell me, what your experience was like for summer school?
Yeah, so both of my girls actually participated in the Sparks program, and initially only my oldest one got an invite, and last minute we received an email, and I was really excited for Sierra to be able to attend the Sparks program because we were out of district for elementary school. So all of her elementary school friends were all going to either High Desert or Cascade. And so she knew no one coming to Pilot Butte, and it really helped her to acclimate to the middle school life, transitioning from one teacher to many teachers. She made friends, and that's probably one of the most important things for us. Education is very important, but socialization is just as important or more important for me. So knowing that she made a few friends and made a good friend, it really helped. So thank you to all the staff that helped make it happen, and we're just very impressed with the whole program.
Okay. So my hope here is that you caught one of the themes that were in that presentation, and from them talking about summer school, is that they just had a kickoff and getting ready for the fall. So they had the experience of being in summer school, being with friends, making new friends, and making those transitions from those important grades. Either they were going from that 5th to 6th or 8th to 9th, and then, as you know, it was really important for them. So what questions might you have?
I have one for you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Criteria to choose the kids. We probably had other kids that would like to, and we heard the mom say, my second child got in at the last minute. Just briefly, what's the criteria?
The criteria was, we based it off of need, and we looked at literacy scores. We looked at different scores for kids. One of the main criteria was our ELL students. We looked at kids who needed that, just basically that extra boost of academics. And that's what we based it off of, and we looked at a lot of data points and anecdotal information from teachers as well.
I would guess the teacher recommendations were also honored?
Yes.
What causes there to be a cap? Is it staffing or space or the number of students that are willing to come or funding, or like why 1,500? Awesome number. I'm just curious what limits that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, transportation would have been one of those barriers. One of the things when we were looking at the beginning, as we know, transportation was, we didn't have a lot of bus drivers at the beginning to try to figure this out. And so that was one of the criteria by which we were kind of limiting it a little bit. And then also we wanted to ensure that we were having like hubs in terms of the spacing of geographics of where the schools were going to be located to ensure that we had equal representation of kids enrolled.
And what is the academic goal usually? Is it to just keep students from summer slide, or is it to actually try to move them beyond where they finished the last school year? How do you measure that?
Yeah, I don't measure it. I think it was, again, so through the pandemic, a lot of kids were not in school. So this gave kids the opportunity to kind of like, quote unquote, play school, how to do school again. And so it was, again, just to give them that boost to get ready for the fall. How to do school, how to be in front of, socialize in front of their peers, teachers, and those sorts of things. Kevin, you want to add anything? Wendy, would you like to add anything from your perspective, or Kevin?
No, I think you covered it really well.
I can jump in just a little bit, Juan. Hi, friends. I'm Wendy McAuliffe. I'm a white, differently abled female who works to support High Desert Middle School as well as support the summer learning. And it was a great opportunity. And it was our first time doing it in my history in Ben Lapine, which is 15 years or something. So I think a lot of it, Carrie, to your question, was in response to the pandemic and seeing what we could do to support students, like Juan mentioned, just learn how to do school, how to advocate for their learning, how to email teachers, how to be a part of a school community. And then I just want to note that our high schoolers were able to recover some credit that maybe was not complete by the time school got out in June. And so that was a big push for our secondary site, is really just giving them that carrot of some credit recovery so they could start this fall not behind the 8 ball as much as they would have without this opportunity that we offered this summer.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and very exciting to see a little bit for our community about how we are spending some of our CARES dollars, because our CARES dollars are funding summer school this past summer as well as next summer. So thank you. 2 more summers, excuse me. We'll now move into item 8D, enrollment update with Brad Henry, our Chief Operations and Financial Officer.
Thanks, Melissa. I believe the PDF is in board book and now on the screen. I guess I want to start with pointing out that we are happy to welcome almost 17,600 students to Ben Lapine schools this year. That includes all of our schools, as well as Ben Lapine Online and our programs, including charters and our alternative learning options. The process to project enrollment really starts in December. So last December of 2020 is when we are required to submit information to ODE that starts the funding projection for the 21-22 school year. So we start with enrollment projection. A typical year, which last year was anything but a typical year would start with us looking at 5 years prior birth rate to try and project what kindergarten might look like, and then look at our history as well as the essentially moving that grade cohort forward. So first grade into second grade into third grade with some growth. recall last year in December, we were not in person. We were distance learning, and we were well below what our enrollment was the prior year, over 1,000 below. So it was very difficult to make that projection. We landed on a projection that had us not quite getting back to the 2019-20 enrollment, roughly 200 short of that. And the thought process there was that, you know, maybe it was hope that we would be out of the pandemic and moving back to more normalized instruction. And obviously that's not the case this year. We are in person, which is great, but the pandemic is still with us. So diving into some numbers, you can see the yellow shaded box. If I guess on your screens you can see that. You can see that for the 21-22 year, we projected that we would be, as I said, just under, a couple hundred students under where we were in 19-20, which was 18,400 or so. We are currently sitting at almost 17,600, so quite a ways under projection as of today. And these numbers are out of our system this afternoon, so they are live. Typically, we provide this information to the board in the first Tuesday of the school year, which is usually the board meeting evening. The first Monday is when we ask the schools to try to have the data as clean as possible, meaning they know which students have not shown up yet for the year, and so they are required to go through a drop process to drop those students from enrollment. Doesn't mean they won't come back, but we haven't seen them yet. We're required to go through that process. And so that happened mostly yesterday, some today. And so I think the data as of right now is pretty clean. You can see on that right box, there's a lot of numbers on the screen, obviously, or on this sheet. It's hard to find the right number to compare to when you had a year like last year. We are about where we were last year at this time. Again, last year at this time, we were not in person. We were all distance learning. Compared to April, we're about 150 more students than in April of last year. In that right box, you can see kind of the numbers by level. And then under that, you can see the highlighted, we're under projection by about 850 students. About 700 of those are in our schools. The rest are in our charter schools and our alternative learning options. Ben Lapine Schools Online, one of the things we did, last year we had roughly 1,800 students in some version of that. So it was Ben Lapine Schools Online or the Comprehensive Distance Learning Program. Going into this year, our projection was, again, trying to get close to the 1920 number, but we assumed that we were going to have a number of students stay in a virtual environment. Typically, prior to the pandemic, we were 200 to 250 full-time online in our Ben Lapine online program. We projected that would be twice as many, so 500 going into 21-22. In that box on the right, you can see where it says BLSO. We are currently sitting at about 440. That's full-time online, which is getting close to that 500. I will note that we do have students that do both. They'll be in person, but they'll also take online courses. Those are not included in the 440 for Ben Lapine online. And I could talk about this stuff all day. I look at this probably way too much. So I'll leave it there and happy to try and answer any questions.
Brad, your ability to project enrollment is legendary. I think in my years on the board before the pandemic, you were always within like a handful. So definitely do not fault you for not being able to predict during a worldwide pandemic and housing crisis and and all the things. I think if my math is right, it looks like we're almost 1,100 students down from pre-pandemic, from that 2019 September number. And so I find that concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I think we all do. And I don't know, maybe you do, whether our overall population is down, whether families, it seems like a lot of workers have left the area. So I don't know if you know if our overall population in Bend is up or down. And then I know it's difficult to track students after they leave our system, but if and when might we have more information about where those students have gone?
Yeah, it's really difficult to know where they went. That we do receive kind of anecdotal information when other districts might request file information on our students, but we don't track it.
Mm-hmm.
What we can do and what we will do is look at which students were with us pre-pandemic and which ones are not with us now. Obviously, those that graduated wouldn't be with us now, but and get an idea of which students, where, which grades those students are no longer with us. That can that might give us a clue as to what happened. We can try to gather from schools kind of some of that anecdotal that can help us along those lines too.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as population, it's hard, the pandemic feels like it's been forever,
Yeah.
but it's hard to have, good population numbers through a pandemic. I don't
Sure.
know that anybody has that. Obviously, prior to the pandemic, we were still growing as a region. So I've heard that we are still growing, but
Okay.
I don't know that for a fact.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Brad, do we do monthly updates
We don't do, did you ask monthly?
or quarterly or?
Usually what happens is we're required to submit formal enrollment on
4 times.
as of October 1st.
Mhm.
And so I'll usually come back or I'll at least put a report in the consent agenda showing kind of where we're at that time. And then after that, I generally don't. You'll get an update as we get into the budget process, kind of where our enrollment is and what we're projecting for next year. Those are generally the updates.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Brad, I know, I don't want to, tell me if I'm getting ahead of myself on the budget piece.
Okay.
But I know based on our previous numbers, we had certain pieces in terms of what our reserve would carry, about whether we would be refilling hires that resigned, et cetera. And so this number is significantly bigger than what we were looking at. And so
Yeah.
I'm just curious if it's now or at a future meeting to be able to hear from a budget standpoint what measures we're going to be taking to account for the additional loss of enrollment.
Yeah, so we'll talk more in depth about that at the October 12th. Is that what it is? October 12th meeting. We'll have a financial update at that time. We want to kind of get all of our employees in our system and kind of get an idea of what that's going to cost us for the year to give you the full picture. This will certainly have an impact on our revenue. There's no doubt about that. Last year we were, because of the way we're funded, there's a hold harmless provision to our funding formula. We were held mostly harmless, not completely last year. This year we will not be. I don't know if you call it good news, but one of the other factors is that we are in tune to what's happening across the state, at least in the larger districts. Most large districts are seeing the same thing. Maybe not to this degree. We're kind of tracking each other's enrollment and watching what's happening, but there are a number of them that are also down quite a ways from the peak pre-pandemic. And many of them kind of made the same assumptions. Some of them were more aggressive, some less aggressive as far as what this year was going to look like. And so that we're all kind of seeing the same thing. What that means is if statewide enrollment is down, that per pupil amount can increase. So there will be a little bit of, offset there. It will have an impact on our revenue. I think that we'll show in October that we can offset some of that with dollars that we're bringing in from last year, kind of moving more than we expected from last year. I think we'll have some expenditure savings as well for various reasons. So, but we don't have all of that data yet, and we'll show that in October.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And Brad, the only question I have is about new students. In terms of looking at those numbers, does that change any of this in terms of like people coming from other districts, other places, coming from other regions? Does that number get counted in this as well, or when do we see that in October?
Yeah, that's all included.
Okay.
If we have new students between today and October 1st, obviously they'll be in the new number. And we have our enrollment changes daily for various reasons, whether families are moving out or coming in. Usually it's coming in and it grows for the first half of the year, and then you get into the second half of the year and high school numbers start to drop off. Early graduates, various reasons. Again, this last year and this year are not typical, so we'll see what happens as we go through. Hopefully we start to pick some of these students back up and can serve them like we do the rest.
Brad, when is the number finalized?
So for enrollment, there really isn't a final number. We submit, the number we submit on October 1st is what the state uses for a lot of their reporting. But we track enrollment, we watch enrollment monthly. After this first few weeks, I start to look at it on the first of the month every month, and it changes every month. There's a kind of a loose correlation to our funding is based on average daily membership. And, I hate to even get into that because it takes me down a rabbit hole, but basically it looks at how many days is a student enrolled versus the enrollment is point in time. How many are here today? Average daily membership looks at average enrollment for a student and then combines that all for all the students, and that's how we're funded. And so we submit that on October 1st. We submit it again cumulative on January 1st, again I think it's May 1st. And then the final, which might be what you're referring to, is in July. So we're funded based on a projection all year long. We submit our final in July with all the rest of the state. And then they finalize our funding actually almost a year later in May, based on that and property tax collections and everything else. So that's a very brief, high-level overview. And I could talk about that forever too. So.
Are there other questions on enrollment? Thank you so much, Brad. We so appreciate you, and just echo Carrie's sentiments. There's not many districts that have somebody who is as skilled as you are on these pieces, and this is an extraordinary time.
I usually try to point out at least one school where I was right on, and there actually is one in this report, but I didn't feel it was appropriate. So, thanks.
Great, thank you. We will now move into 8E, which is our executive limitations. And Ben Lapine Schools, just so people know, is a policy board, meaning that we govern through policies using the Carver model for governance. We have set forth 13 executive limitations that detail the work we expect of the superintendent. These work in tandem with the board goals and are how we hold our superintendent accountable for moving forward the work of the district. So tonight we will hear reports on executive limitations, number 1 and number 2. And I will hand it over to Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Nordquist.
As our board members know, many of our executive limitations have quite a lot of detail in them. Executive limitations 1 and 2 do not. It was difficult to make to do an executive summary of such short executive limitations. So executive limitation 1, basically we're assuring the board that the superintendent will act in moral, ethical, and legal ways. And with executive limitation 2, that we have he maintains 24/7 communication with the board, or if Steve's not able to be in communication, that myself or Brad Henry or Steve Herron would be able to step in an emergency situation. So if I'll entertain questions.
I do have one question, and this came up last year. I would personally, with executive limitation 2, the way that it reads is that the superintendent is always maintaining contact with the board. I am not sure that from a health perspective, that is actually appropriate. I would encourage our board to be really looking at executive 2 and allowing for our superintendent to name a designee when he or she is going to be out of office and empower that designee. And I think that that would be a more appropriate, that would be an more appropriate policy and language in our executive limitation.
I feel like that's how it's worked in practice, so I would be very much in support of codifying that.
I also want to note that on executive limitation number 2, and has been done in the past, I feel very strongly that our superintendents have in the past, and that Steve has continued to have his chief executives, the deputy superintendent, our chief financial and operations officer, and now our new chief human resources officer, as a team that is fully involved in all major decisions, so that we do have a really strong bench in terms of our leadership of the district.
These are always the easiest ELs. If they're not going well, then we're really in trouble. So,
yes, true. If there are no further comments on EL 1 and 2, thank you for the report. We will move into policies and regulations and review, and I will hand that over to Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. Before we get deeply into these policies, I just want to remind us, as a part of policy governance, administration is afforded the ability to make changes to levels of policy and then seek input, both from board members and or the public. And as recently as last month, was it last month or 2 months ago, we instituted a new approach in which we're seeking, pushing policies out for 30 days to get public input on those. And so we actually have in 8G some new policies to bring before you for your information. These aren't ones that, policies that are going to require your approval, just an opportunity for input and feedback. But in 8H, we are requesting some approval on a policy as well. And so I just want to reiterate that, and we're going to try to do a really nice job in board book of designating which ones are the ones that we need your approval on, and which ones we're just inviting your input and feedback in the same manner in which we would receive it from the public. And so it's a little bit of a work in progress, but want to be clear about that. And I think these are really, really important policies. Let's start with the policies and review. I think that's the ones that you're seeing for the first time this month. Excuse me. We've been talking about this since I've been here, and the idea of bringing a very explicit kind of approach on how we're going to deal with controversial topics and how we're going to approach those, especially in light of kind of the discord that's going on nationally right now. We felt that it was imperative that we got this in front of you and in front of our public, and also in support of our instructors who are going to be trying to deal with challenging situations with regards to the curricula and in topics that might be quite controversial for many families. And then how are we then best going to recognize and honor where families might approach in that discussion. And so there's been lots and lots of conversation about this particular policy, both internally. We've gotten a lot of feedback from staff and even some community members, even already, even before we've released those to the public. So we'd love to just have put these in front of you for just a little bit for discussion. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to give us information before we push those out to the public for that 30-day period.
Steve, just a step back for me to clarify. Can you tell me the difference between the ones that are under review and the difference between the ones that come up to us for adoption, and just explaining that?
So yes, that's a great clarification. I'm glad to make, Shamiko. There's actually 4 things that are going to be in front of you with regards to policies. There are the policies that are the board's purview to approve. They will come to you in review. And then once you've given feedback to us and the public's been given an opportunity to give feedback, those will come back for board approval. Then there are the policies that are the administrator's purview to push out. We will bring those in front of you as well, and those will come in review just for input and feedback. And then they will come back as we will communicate those as here's the finalized version of those after 30 days of being available to the public. And so that's why it's a little confusing, and I think we want to do a better job of delineating those so it's very clear what that level of board policy is, which is kind of more governance level, and then we get into the specifics. And quite frankly, some of the specifics are every bit as interesting as, but those live under according to the executive limitations, those live under administrative guidance. And so, but we do want to do a very transparent approach on both of these. And so that's the reason for the delineation between the difference. And I do think that we can work on language a little better so that it's very clear which ones are looking for input and which ones are looking for board approval. But that 30-day piece for kind of that transparent view, both from board and from community, will be available for both levels.
I'll just say I was really excited to see the Studying Controversial Issues recommendation. I've definitely heard people suggest that perhaps schools should not discuss controversial issues, and I just couldn't disagree more. I think it's pretty clear that in large part the adults in our country have shown that we are having difficulty talking in productive ways about controversial issues, and as a school system, if we abdicate our responsibility to use those 13 years with kids to help them understand how to deal with controversial issues, that would definitely be bad. I did have a wondering, as a former teacher, I'll just speak personally, I don't remember any training around how to navigate controversial issues in class. I was a science teacher, so maybe other types of teachers got that training. My wondering is whether we should expect all teachers to do that work, or whether it might be smart to focus in on some subset of teachers that really receive additional training and support and role-playing and practice, because you don't want to walk into a room unprepared and try to discuss a controversial issue. And I think it's just a lot to ask teachers to both do all the day-to-day learning and address controversial issues, and I think it's really important. So just a wondering, but as we can continue to try to figure out how to do this really well and in a way that our public can trust, all of the public can trust, that this will be done well, whether it might make sense to focus in on a smaller subset of teachers, at least to start, sort of similar to, literacy training cohorts or something. Anyway, you don't have to answer it, it's just
if I may, I would like to at least comment in some regards to that. So the good news in regards to the breadth of the challenge, I think that you draw a very valid point on, is that every single one of these are grounded in the state standards and the curricula that we are expected to deliver. So it's not necessarily a surprise to a teacher to be faced with, here's something that I'm expected to teach. And I think that's the part. Now, I'll admit that the what might be controversial at second grade and what might be controversial in a junior history class or a junior sociology class are completely different kinds of topics. And I think some of that is just the training that we're talking about, that we mentioned 45 minutes ago earlier in the board meeting, how important it is that teachers know and understand their role and how their instructional strategies should always be grounded back into what's the expectation and the standards. And so I think that's probably a good place for us to stop. Most humanities teachers that in middle school and high school, and in some regards, I think even I was a former science teacher as well, know going in where are those places where you're going to wind up, or health teachers, for example, where you're going to wind up touching it in some kind of space curricularly that is going to wind up having some interest that might be polarizing, both by students and by families. And I think that's the part that we're trying to work our way through, is how do we give families interest and access into that. You know, we're not going to apologize for teaching state standards, but there is some want for making sure families know and understand what those things are and how we communicate that effectively, so parents have a way to weigh in on what their kids are experiencing, whether it is a second grader or a junior in high school. That's a very real and great opportunity for us to partner with those families that may or may not want more or less in those areas. And I think that's the fine line, or the threading of the needle, that, if you will, that we're trying to do with building the policy around this and giving very clear expectations to those teachers. So when they do recognize I'm going in and I might be trained or I might not be as trained as I want to be, that I know where the edges of the boundaries are.
And I think what I'm hearing Carrie say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, is that if we're gonna have this in place, we got to make sure we have the training implemented into some of this piece as well, in terms of making sure they have the support necessary for them. Is it have a mentor, have someone to be able to help, guide them in these controversial conversations, because we want to make sure that if a teacher is going to go in and start speaking on these various things, that they do not only have the support, but understanding if they fail forward, if you want to put it that way, that they feel comfortable being able to do that and not just shy away from it because it's something that's in the national spotlight, or something that's regionally happening, or even something that's happening within their own schools. Prime example with the LGBTQ issues and stuff like this, when someone says something and then all of a sudden kids start choosing sides, and all of a sudden no one's ready to be able to have that conversation, right? Or we have gender concerns, people being able to have those conversations and feel comfortable being able to do so in a tactful but an educational way.
Completely agree. And I think both points that both you have made are that when people get uncomfortable or don't feel like they're prepared and ready to go into that kind of area, that they just tend to avoid it altogether. And I think that's what we might be seeing even more of. And so we're going to continue to push in this area, and we're going to continue, some of this is just as simply as making sure we know and understand what the state standards are. And in some cases, knowing what we're choosing to avoid or what we're choosing to go into either delicately or maybe not fully engaged in. And so that training is something that we're going to be expected to support them with as we develop this out and get very clear on that guidance and those expectations. Laura, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to jump in. Kinsey has been working with a team of teachers for 2 years, the lead cohort. And for those of you who were on the board last year, remember we talked about that a little bit. But some of that work is for them to play lead roles in helping those, working with those instructional practices. And one of the things that they have done is used, and I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Kay's book, Not Light But Fire, but it's an outstanding book, especially for secondary teachers, about how to create a classroom and how to ensure, one of the things he talks about is avoiding what he calls pop-up conversations, because if you have not laid the groundwork embedded in your content, in your standards,
that's exactly what I
and
mean,
things
yeah.
just get thrown in, those are very dangerous conversations. And how do you set up a class? People say, I want my classroom to be safe. Well, what does that really mean? How do you do that? So we definitely have teams of teachers working on that. And helping others with that as well. Has everybody been through that? No, but it's very important work. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Yeah, that was exactly what I was speaking to. And I just want to recognize and appreciate teachers today. Again, I can only use my own experience, but when I was teaching, there was a handful of topics that were controversial, and now it feels like everything is. And so I just want to recognize that and support them. And I know people have trouble having controversial topic conversations at the dinner table with friends and relatives. And so to ask teachers to do that with a diverse room of young people without really recognizing and supporting what we're asking of them is a lot.
And also I want to thank Kinsey and Laura as well, and in the sense of working with restorative practices as well, working with restorative justice equity to do the circles as well as the individual stuff too. I think there's different things that I know we're going to continue to keep pushing as well. So thank you for doing that work also.
I'd just like to add one thing. Yes, the teachers get it first, but the first person that they're going to go to probably is their building administrator or the lead teacher. And that training for building administrators, I think, is crucial. They're darn good at understanding, at problem solving and finding solutions, but they need some guidance too on particular issues. So, and again, it is different at different grade levels. So I would just like to second that the training include very carefully anointing our administrators to how to deal with and where to get their support or resources if they need it.
I also want to talk about how we support teachers in this who have lived experience based on the topics that are happening. So also, what are the support systems that we have in place for teachers of color, teachers of different gender identities? As these topics come up, I think having a trauma-informed school system is really, if that's our goal, it's really focused on how are we ensuring that these teachers are not being re-traumatized in the classroom as they navigate these difficult conversations and teach this content. So just putting that out there that hopefully we can strengthen those support systems for them.
Kinsey mentioned earlier, and this is just one element, Shamiko, but talking about the employee resource groups, to think about some affinity groups in district to help, where people can talk about how they're trying to navigate issues and what support they need, and lots of other things too, but I did want to mention that.
I had a couple quick notes, and I can also follow up with some written notes as well. But I think that one of the things that I really appreciate about this is, first of all, defining what a controversial issue is, and I feel like that can be loaded, quite honestly, right now, and this idea that there's honest disagreement about something. And then I would caution us to make sure that we really have a true north on what is considered controversial, because when I read the following pieces, I respect teachers immensely, and I do not want them to have to be running everything by their principal every time they're having a conversation in their class. And so I want us to be able to really communicate to our teachers what is controversial and what is not, so that they are not having to feel like they need to do that every time something comes up. Two other pieces, I really think about controversial issues, and I have for the last 2 years, around student agency and giving students the ability to talk and really think independently about pieces of information by having both sides. And so I would consider some of the language around will and really think about whether that's about will or about empowering kids. And so I would make that suggestion. And then last, that was on INB-AR, but on IIA-AR, I would like to make sure that we really are consistent in terms of what it looks like to represent our students and our families in our curriculum. And number one of those bullets really lists a lot of different identifying characteristics. In number 7, which is actually about our curriculum and where our kids show up, is much more limited in that discussion. And so I would really want to see us looking at our curriculum to make sure that it creates a sense of belonging for all students and that we use more towards what is in number 1 than in number 7.
Okay, if I may clarify on just that last point, you're saying that the way that number 1 on IIAR, the way it's written, it is more inclusive and covers more topics, and 7 is written a little more limiting than that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for that feedback. I think, there's so many opportunities here, and this is not the kind of, we would agree with everything that's been said, and we are glad to get that feedback. But I think what you'll hear from us is this is going to be an ongoing continuation of work for many years to come as whatever comes out of this political environment and this pandemic and how we manage the energy around that. It's going to be imperative that our students are seeing adults that know how to recognize what students are bringing into the classroom, both in their lived experiences, and then setting that expectation for their own agency and growth and engagement in this dialogue. And whether we're talking about 8-year-olds or we're talking about students talking about some of the biggest challenges we're facing in this country. And so we're trying to, with this policy, start to put some edges around those conversations so that our teachers know and have some supports. And we feel like this is a good move in the right direction.
In the second piece, I would definitely want to see a little bit more in terms of the student engagement piece and allowing them to be able to help instruct. Because I think a lot of times we get away from that aspect in the secondary area. Because I think they have a lot more to give us than we give them credit for in terms of critically thinking. I think that's something we are trying to always get back to. So I think we can definitely utilize their skill sets if we can to be around this materials as well. So that'll be the one thing I would look at in terms of empowering the students.
Okay. And that was also on IIAR? Yep. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions on the policies and regulations in review? Then we will move to policies and regulations for adoption.
So just before we move on, I just want to remind everybody that those will all go out for 30 days and we'll receive, and I'm certain that we will receive public interest in those as they get pushed out and are available for feedback and comment. In 8H, we are bringing back the policies that were before you last month. And these are, Janet, these are for approval, right? Is that correct? These do not require board approval. I will tell you that one of the changes that just happened today on, and I forget which one it is, JCAR. On JCAR, we mentioned this earlier today on page 3. We did go back and modify. This was redlined. If folks have watched this at home, or if this was redlined previously because it was dated for 2021. And so we actually decided it made more sense after lots of conversation. We are honoring all of these ACR holds for folks that want to go into Ben Lapine online rather than be in our choice option schools. And so we actually changed, and instead of had the red line option, we actually changed the year and put those all back in, because we were in the practice right now of making those honors currently in place. So those are there. This is going to phase out at the end of this school year. And we would have to address whatever those situations would look like again at roughly this time next year to ensure that those, unless we're in the same boat, goodness sakes, I don't even want to say that, that we would have the opportunity to revisit this policy at that time. But just wanted to let you know that those are all back in. So we'll take any questions on that one.
Steve, I'm struggling to find, I think this is the same document that we had a conversation about, right? About the choice option schools and.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
JCAR, page 3.
Is that? No, I think it's.
It's not the.
Yeah.
Ah, there it is.
Oh, that's residency.
Thank you. I literally clicked on that. For some reason I didn't see it.
Are we taking them one by one?
We can.
I have some comments on the third, but I'll.
On the third
wait
one?
for, yeah, IGBHABAR.
Okay.
If there's no comments on the earlier two, then Carrie, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So to the policies around choice option schools and programs, I think some of you know I study education policy as my day job and have been interested in some policies around choice programs for a while, and then just experienced going through the lottery process myself with a kindergartner, and so kind of brought my theoretical interest in the topic to real life. And there was just like, I don't have anything, I'm not gonna not support the adoption of this, but I would love for our board and staff to have a conversation about both the access and lottery process, and a conversation, a review of how choice options are working for our district. And I just wanna say I'm super impressed with all of the variety of choice options that our district has. I think we have 9 choice option schools, and I really agree with the belief that both students and families and teachers and administrators getting to have the option to find a program and a place and a culture that works for them is excellent. I am particularly interested in a set of policies. They're named different things, but common names are the combination of a school finder and a common enrollment system. And I'll just speak from my experience going through the process this past year. 2 aspects of it. One is that I found it really difficult, not as a school board member, but as a parent, to find comparative information about our schools in a really easy to find format. What makes them each unique? What are the special programs? What is their data, both student outcomes, discipline, culture, survey data, any data we might have on a school. And so I found even myself, and certainly hear from lots of other parents, that they tend to listen to informal, what other parents say about a school or what they've heard about a school. And so a school finder is essentially just a way to try to provide really transparent, easy, comparable information to students and families to help them pick a school. And then common enrollment is to deal with the issue of, again, I'll speak from personal experience. I applied to both dual immersion programs, 1 magnet school and 1 charter school. And that required, 4 different applications, different websites. I knew how to find them even as a school board member, honestly, had trouble finding all the applications. Can't fathom trying to navigate it, frankly, without the access that I do. And then, my understanding is that I could have been accepted into multiple of those or none of those. Again, the access or the idea that all of our families would know and be able to research those schools, apply for them with the system we have, I think is unrealistic. And so a common enrollment system, the basic idea is that every school, including all of our districts, all of our magnets, all of our charters, you fill out 1 application. And on the back end, there's an algorithm that helps the goal is usually to maximize the most number of families receiving one of their top choices while balancing demographics for all the schools. And again, we've been a smaller system for a long time. The system worked for a while. We are now much bigger and much more complex, and I think it's just time to look at how some bigger choice systems do this. So that's on kind of the access and information side. And then I would also love, as we do with everything, but as a board, to just have a chance to dig into our choice option schools and how they are serving our students compared to our neighborhood schools, which, by the way, we ended up at our neighborhood school and are super happy and thrilled to be there. But I would love some transparent data looking at what are the demographics of our choice schools compared to our neighborhood schools. Are we seeing similar rates across race, ethnicity, class, ELL, language diversity, special ed, and how does funding flow to those schools, and how do those two relate? So, I think in general, smaller schools, you tend to have to spend more per pupil in a smaller school just because of how it works, which would be fine unless our smaller schools are disproportionately serving unequal demographics, then that would be a problem. I'd love to just dig into that a little bit. And then on the outcome side, just how are our choice schools performing compared to our neighborhood schools? I'd love to know how long the wait lists are for choice schools. And I think all of that is just relevant to, as we grow, should we open more neighborhood schools, or should we be replicating really popular choice schools? What data do we have both about parent demand and outcome data? So again, I got you all these questions very late today. I did not expect answers today, but I would love to start kind of a deeper review. Again, love the programs, not saying anything otherwise, but just think it's always worth digging in and seeing if they're meeting our intended goals and et cetera.
I think, if I may, the data kind of share would be something we could get fairly reasonably in timeline, and give some, maybe have a pretty extensive presentation available. The idea of a common enrollment, I think you mentioned something that is, that is actually, I would be highly supportive of the idea that there's a system that stands behind all of our schools that wouldn't be predicated on choice enrollment or any, but just that the idea of we aspire to an application and on an enrollment system that is completely systematized, that would allow for that kind of comparison and building a way for parents to know and recognize and see that. And that's a little more extensive, and that would take some infrastructure work, but I would agree with you that it's time for us to start focusing on systems like that. So to me, there's two paths forward, kind of the short game. We'd love to and be glad to get you those answers and share that with the board. And then kind of the long game, what are those outcomes and those goals we'd like to see over time on how that process is built so that it is more user-friendly and people can kind of get into what is the best choice for, or the best solution for my family, which may oftentimes be neighborhood school.
Thank you.
Steve, I'd just make one other comment. As a new board member, it seems to me that the options that we have in this size school district are way beyond what other districts have. I'm not sure that's true. That's my perception. I would like to have some comparative data too about the number of students in other districts, maybe the top 10 largest districts in the state, about comparison figures on, on a number of kids in online. Now, again, after the last 2 years, that's going to be not great data, but in choice schools, in magnet schools, those kinds of things. And so I really second Carrie's request to do some real looking at that. We are getting new parents in our district, and it would be very difficult to try to explain. If they would ask me, I'd come right to you. But I think that the use of that kind of data and really doing that is worth a significant study session in some time in this year, maybe, if we could do it.
Thank you.
My only addition here, or I guess a question that came up, and I think we read the bulletin's editorial today on this as well, but in terms of magnet zones and walking distance, and so we have that for 3 of our schools, but not for others, so that would be a question that I'd like to understand better. I know some of these schools aren't in neighborhoods, Realms Middle School is, and so just how are we deciding which has a walking distance and what it is? And then the other piece is just the choice option. I too, Shirley, am really excited about all of the different avenues that our district has. And I feel like this is 2/3 of the offerings because we're looking at things like EL education with Realms Middle School and High School as a choice option, but we have Pilot Butte Middle School and Bend High with our IB option, and then we have Bear Creek, Jewel, High Desert, Caldera with our dual immersion. And so I think that all of those pieces kind of, there's some place where they all fit together when we're really talking about what are the choices and what are the different pathways that we have for kids and for families. So I feel when I'm reading this, I feel like we're leaving out some parts, and I'm also just, Juniper also is, I'm wondering why it isn't there.
Yeah, and I think like if you want to join the IB program, you do an area change request, whereas if you want to go to Realms High School, you apply to a choice program. So yeah, and I think again, this is natural, like as a district grows and adds, but that it's probably worth reviewing the whole system and making sure that it makes sense.
Thank you for all that feedback. That's very good stuff. And we'll start tackling the low-hanging fruit on this right away and then start working on the long game as well.
Gone on 8H. All right. Then we will move into board comments. And just to be clear, board comments is a time where a board member can make a comment, but is certainly not required. So rather than going down a line, I will just invite board comments from anybody who wishes to make them.
Right, I'll go first. First, I want to thank you guys for all the hard work you guys have done with getting this information to us. We appreciate it very much so we can review. Next, I want to thank all the teachers, students, staff for their continued efforts, coming back here in person, continue to be safe, continue to do the necessary things to be able to have in school. So I want to continue to want that to happen, and let's keep working hard to continue to be safe in those areas. And I had a great opportunity to visit a few schools, and I'm serious, it's great to see staff smiling and happy with all the students around, and I just want to applaud all those various people being able to do all this hard work. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the parents, making sure that they getting the students there on time, doing the necessary things to make sure that these students are safe also. So I just want to definitely put that out there. So thank you very much, everyone.
I'd like to add that I had the privilege of visiting all the South County schools on the first day of school, and it was overwhelming and awesome. So I saw kids and teachers working together. I saw the kids, instead of sitting side by side at the 2-person table, they're sitting on the ends, so they're the proper, it works. I saw the kids at Lapine Elementary, the kindergartners, eating lunch, sitting on the grass, but sitting on brightly colored pieces of rubber. They actually, it kind of looked like a Frisbee, but that allowed them to sit on the grass but not, have wet spots. I thought that was brilliant. I saw a high school teacher interviewing in the advisory project or the advisory period, each kid saying, going to them at their desk and saying, now who are you and where do you live? And do you have any brothers and sisters? Do you have a dog? What do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, it was a very personal get to know you kind of session in that initial day. And I just saw so many good things between teachers and kids. So kudos, folks. The things that we sit and talk about are happening. And that's a really strong signal that our folks who are out on the trenches are really paying attention and doing great things.
I'll just quickly piggyback on that, Shirley. I, again, speaking just personally, when we arrived at school with my kindergartner, the teacher, despite everyone being in masks and tons of kids arriving, as my daughter walked through the door, she called her by name. And at the end of the day, when we asked her what her favorite thing about school was, she said, "My teacher knew my name." And, we talk up here all the time about the goal of knowing kids by name and need and purpose. And it starts with that and just the fact that the thing, she got a new playground and new friends and all these things. And the thing that mattered the most to her was just that her teacher knew who she was. I think speaks really clearly to the fact that we have the right vision and that our teachers and principals play that out every day. And I was thinking of all the teachers the first week of school dealing with everything, and then there was smoke and rain and kids couldn't go out for recess, and you are all just saints. So thanks to everyone that pulled off a really great first week despite all of the obstacles. And then I also just wanted to take the opportunity to let you all know that I am moving out of Zone 1 to Zone 3. Obviously, life happens, and a series of events, including the pandemic and a tough housing market, didn't allow us to stay in Zone 1 for the remainder of my term. I think, as most of you know, I was born and raised here, and I went through K-12 here, and so I have literally either gone to a school or worked with a school or a program in almost every neighborhood and zone in our district over the past 4 decades. And want you to know, of course, that I will continue to be a super strong advocate for our whole system, but also for Zone 1, even though I will no longer live there. And that due to my move, unless something changes, that my current term is scheduled to end in June of 2023. Thanks.
I think I'm Zone 3. You can have my seat, and I will retire. I think I am retiring, right, in 2 years? I don't have any comments this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. A couple quick comments. First, for everybody who came to give public comment, thank you so much. And with the Google form, I hopefully can read everybody's email, and so I will reach out to you, each of you individually, to let you know how I will follow up with the feedback that you gave. Next, from the board member perspective, I want to say that I did have the privilege since our last meeting of going to Ben Senior High School and meeting with the IB team there, the International Baccalaureate team. And one of the highlights, in addition to the fantastic work they're doing, and if you're not familiar, they shared data with me, and I'm a data nerd. But that team is knocking it out of the park, and not just exceeding national averages, but worldwide averages in terms of the number of kids that are ending up with college credit coming out of taking different IB courses. So that was really exciting. But then the second most exciting piece was we got to meet in the Robert Maxwell Center. And it is a state of art. Ooh, and so I just want to thank our voters for the last bond and the amount of money that went into this first stage of renovating Ben Senior High School. I saw the wall where the Maxwell Center will continue to be built out if we have funding in our next bond, but just really want to thank our public for giving our students the type of learning facility they deserve. It's incredible. Thank you also, as I mentioned earlier, for the ILTC conference. It was fantastic. And then last, as a parent, One of my kids is in college now, but the other's still in middle school. And for everybody else who is managing buses and boundary changes, I am with you, and cannot thank our district enough. We went through a boundary change twice now, both in elementary school and in secondary. And so my son is moving from one middle school to another, and I cannot express the care with which the middle schools did new student orientation, and I hadn't really thought about it, but he was right there with a bunch of other 7th graders who maybe were in Ben Lapine online all of last year. And so the care that the schools did, and then the transportation, that is some, anyone who doesn't know, like, please, like, bow down to Kim Crabtree and Tina Bandy about all of the work that they are doing to try and get our kids to school and to get them on buses if their families need buses. But the transportation, it's changing every day. But it was just so exciting to literally stand outside of the Education Center, which is our bus stop, and watch all of our kids get on the buses. And the team is doing an incredible job in extraordinary circumstances. So thank you to our transportation team. And if there's nothing else, I will pick up my gavel and adjourn us for the evening. Thank you so much.